Hello, it's Helen from Journal with Purpose and welcome to my new Journal with Me video. I will be using a plain traveller's notebook insert inside a vintage light TN cover from Start Bay Notebooks. I'm using a Derwent precision pencil and I decided to start these pages off by loosely sketching out a sweet pea flower. It's just been a long weekend here in the UK, so I'd managed to get out into the garden, so I definitely had flowers on my mind, and sweet peas are one of my absolute favourite. I'm now using a Staedtler pigment liner with a 0.1 nib. And I really like this pen because it's waterproof and I'll be adding watercolour over the top in just a moment. Flowers are definitely one of my favourite things to sketch in my journal. I find you don't have to be too precise, so I can just relax and have fun with it. I started off just by sketching the outline of the flower in the stem, and once I'm happy with that I will go back in and add some detail for shading. When I'm creating in my traveller's notebook, I often like to start with one big image, whether that be sketching or collage, and then I create the rest of the spread around that. Now that the sketch is complete, I'm going to add my watercolour, and I'm using some brushes from Escoda Brushes, and I'll be using some lovely paints from London Gifties. This insert isn't watercolour paper, so there will be a little wrinkling, but I find that it still holds up really well. And once the book's been kept inside the cover with the elastic cord around it, they flatten out really quickly. The first colour I'm using is called Golden Sunset, and I'm adding a really watery wash onto the first flower. While the paint's still wet, I'm adding some other little pools of colour to add some depth to the flower, and I'm then just dropping some primrose pink paint straight on top of it. And I really like the way those colours are just mixing in together. I then made sure that the paint was completely dry from the first flower before starting the next one. And I'm going to add a watery wash of turquoise green, and then I will drop some of the blue forget-me-not colour straight on top whilst the paint is still wet. Watercolour is one of my absolute favourite things to use in my journal. You can just add so much bright colour really quickly. And it's quite unpredictable in the way that the paint's going to dry, and I really like that because each time I create something it's going to look completely different to the last one. Again, I wait for the paint to dry, and I'm now going to start painting in the stem, and I'm using the colours of Green Earth and Deep English Green. When I first add the darker green, I'm not that happy with it, so I dry off my brush and use that just to soak up some of the extra paint, and I will then add some of the lighter green earth colour over the top. I don't consider myself an expert in watercolour at all, but overall I'm really happy with how those have come out. And the next thing I'm doing is just adding some splotches of paint colour for fun. And I just make sure that the first colour is completely dry before adding the second. Next up, I'm going to add some stamping to my page, and I'm using this vintage style alphabet stamp. And I've had these a long time, but I'll have a look to see if I can find anything similar on Amazon and link them down below. And I'm just stamping out the word pause. And this word will really reflect what I want these journal pages to be all about, to remind myself to pause and take a moment to enjoy what's going on around me and to create and have fun. And I'm now using these number stamps to add the date to the top of my left-hand page. When I've used really delicate watercolour paints, I really enjoy the contrast then of having some black print on my pages too. To add some colour to my left-hand page, I'm using these really pretty washi tapes from London Gifties, and I was really pleased with how well these colours matched in with the flowers. And when I'm creating in this journal, it's very rare that I will cut my washi tape. I nearly always tear it because I love the look of those rough edges on my page. I'm now going into the craft file in the front of my cover because I knew that I had some scraps of paper in there and I really wanted to add just a little piece of collage. The first thing I do is tear some of the paper down to get the right kind of size, and I'll then play around with them, and once I'm happy with how they're looking, I use Pritt Stick to glue them down to my page. I knew that I wanted to add a little something to balance out the pages, and I'm really happy with how the collage managed to achieve that. The next thing I'm going to do is add some stamping over the top of that collage, and I'm using these lovely stamps that you might have seen me unwrap in my latest unboxing video from London Gifties. And to make sure I get a clean print, I'm using an underlay board underneath my page, as the left-hand side of my journal is starting to get quite bulky and lumpy now. And you'll notice that I use some tissue to just clean the outside of my stamp before pressing down, and that helps to give a really clean print on your page. And to clean and take good care of my stamps, I use Stays On Cleaner with a little brush board, and it really helps to quickly and easily remove that ink from your stamps. For my writing, I'm using this really lovely black ink by Pilot. I can't really pronounce it, but I think it's called Iroshizuku, and the colour is Takisumi, but I'll link it down below. And I'll be using an oblique nib holder with a Nico G nib. I really love using this to write with. I can't do it quickly, but for me that's kind of the point, especially with these journal pages, which for me are all about reminding me to pause and relax and take things slowly sometimes, so it seemed like the perfect pen to use, and I think it adds a really nice style to your pages. I find that I'm always really busy one way or another, so it was really nice to take that time to sit down and think about how lovely it's been actually, and how vital to take that time to relax. And it's definitely something I want to learn from after this long weekend. While I'm here, I just wanted to take a moment to thank so many of you for coming over and joining me on Skillshare. I've got over 400 students on my first creative journaling class there, and I recognise so many of the names from people who follow me on YouTube and take the time to leave me comments, so thank you ever so much. I really hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have, it'd be great if you'd leave it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing. If you've got any questions or comments, please do leave them down below and I'll definitely get back to you. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I really look forward to speaking to you in the next one.